How's it everyone, Grant here, and welcome back to another camera comparison video. And in this video I've got the content creator's dream, the LG V50, up against the big boy, the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus. And so what you're seeing is that blurred background effect, and so that is the portrait video from the LG V50 and the live focus video from the Note 10 Plus. And so this is being shot from the front-facing cameras at 1080p. And like I do in all my camera comparison videos, I'll show you a bunch of photos and videos to give you a pretty good idea how these cameras are performing. And in full disclosure, all this was being shot in auto mode, so pretty much run and gun, point and shoot style, straight out of the camera. And I know that LG V50 has that great manual mode, but I want to show it in full auto because I think that's what most people will be shooting with, and that's what I wanted to show you in this video. And so with that being said, let's get on with the rest of the photos and video. Hey everyone, so here's a bit of a video test from the rear-facing cameras on each phone here at 1080p. And so both of these phones can record with all three cameras in 1080p, wide angle, main, and telephoto. And so this is the wide angle lens right now. You can switch over into the main lens on each. So it's nice that you can actually switch between them while actually recording 1080p video. And it's a very nice blue, clear sunny day. And just in the viewfinders, the LG V50 is a little more realistic, while the Samsung seems to be really producing some deeper blues than I'm seeing, but that could just be the displays. We'll see when we compare these once I offload the video here, but we'll pan over here to the right and we'll go ahead and use the telephoto lens on each to focus in on that cell tower. And each of these has a 10 times digital zoom, so the V50 here, 10 times zoom, and that is extremely clear and stable from what I'm seeing. So usually 10 times digital zooms don't look very good. and are very shaky, but this is looking pretty good. So we'll go back to the main lens there, and we'll go ahead and zoom in on the Note 10 Plus. 10 times digitally, and this also has the zoom audio, so as I zoomed all the way in, my voice should have become more muted. It usually picks up the audio from whatever's in the distance, so I should be a little bit softer as far as my voice here. And again, the Note 10 Plus is also very clear and very stable at 10 times digital. So we'll go back to the main lens again on the Note 10 Plus, pan on a little bit more here, and do a little bit of a focus test. So LG V50 first, so autofocus pretty quick. We'll move off of it, back onto the post, locks in quickly, and one more time. So autofocus on the V50 looks pretty good. We'll go with the Note 10 Plus, and that locked in. We'll move it away one more time. So here also autofocus seems pretty good here on the Note 10 Plus. And so we can do a bit of stabilization as well. So the Note 10 Plus has super steady mode, but you cannot use it on one of the lenses, I think the telephoto. So I don't have it on right now. It's just using whatever stabilization is built into the phone. And I'll do one last pan on the park here. Okay, and like I said, the super steady shot of the Note 10 Plus doesn't support the wide angle lens, and so I turned it on now, and this is still 1080p. We'll do a stabilization test again, so you can compare it to the V50 stabilization and the Note 10 Plus super steady mode here. So I'm just walking normally, not trying to hold the cameras extra steady or anything, just normal motion. And so let me know if you saw any kind of a difference there with the super steady shot on the Note 10 Plus. Okay, so here we are at 1080p 60 frames per second, and on the Note 10 Plus you can only use the main lens at 60 frames per second recording, and on the V50 I can use any of the lenses, wide angle, main, or telephoto, but once I start recording I cannot change it. So these are both on the main lenses here on the V50 and the Note 10 Plus at 1080p 60 frames per second. And so we can go ahead and pan over here to the cell tower, and we lose the optical zoom here, so I can go digital zoom. That's about 3 times on the V50, and I can go all the way up to 8 times at 60 frames per second here. So 8 times digital zoom at 60 frames on the V50, and not looking as clear as it did at 30 frames per second, but still fairly steady as we pan down and back up. And so we can go back out, and we can zoom in on the Note 10 Plus. So that's roughly 3 times zoom there on the Note 10 Plus, and it's a little more shaky, at least in the viewfinder. It could be stabilizing in post. And this still goes up to 10 times digital, so you don't lose any of that range at 60 frames per second, but again, it looks a little bit less clear, and again, in the viewfinder a little more shaky. It could be clearing up that shake in post, I don't know. And I'll zoom all the way back out, and quick autofocus test again on the post with the V50. So that focused in really quickly, move away, focused, back in, and a little more time to focus on that one, and one last time. There you go. Note 10 Plus. So that focuses in pretty nicely. Back away one more time. Doesn't look to have as great a depth of field though, at least what I'm seeing here, as the V50, but still quick autofocus. And here we go with a stabilization test, walking down the stairs. And so usually at 60 frames it's a little hard to stabilize. So let me know what you think of how stable this looks. Again, I'm not really trying extra hard to stabilize them. I'm just walking normally. We can do one last pan around the park again. Alright, and we're back this time at 4K 30 frames per second. And so on the V50 I have a 10-minute recording time limit here, and on the Note 10 Plus I have no time limit showing. So it seems to be unlimited 4K recording here at 30 frames per second on the Note 10 Plus. Again, 10-minute timeout on the V50. Now these are both at wide angle, and so again at 30 frames per second, even in 4K, I can move between each of the lenses while I'm recording. So I can move this back to the main lens here, V50 and Note 10 Plus. And I can go ahead and pan over again to the cell tower, and we can test the optical zoom here on the V50 and on the Note 10 Plus. And then we can go into full zoom here. So again, 10 times digital zoom on the V50, which is looking nice and pretty clear and stable. And I can go ahead and back that out again. And we can zoom in on the Note 10 Plus. Also 10 times digital zoom and has the audio zoom in. So my voice should be a little fainter now. And this is also very stable and very clear. So I'll go back to the main lens here and autofocus, V50. That focused up very quickly and refocused. And finally focused in. So a little slower on the V50 I think, but a little bit better depth of field. And here on the Note 10 Plus, focused up quicker there to me. And again, and one last time. So very nice on the Note 10 Plus. And here's a stabilization test walking down the stairs again. 4K 30, so both of these should be doing fairly well. I believe they both have some kind of stabilization here at even 4K. So let me know what you think of that. And again, one last quick pan around the park to see how it handles exposure and the changing light. Okay, and lastly here we have 4K at 60 frames per second. The V50 has a 6-minute timeout at 4K 60. Again, I'm not seeing any kind of a time limit here on the Note 10 Plus. And again, at 60 frames per second on both of these phones, I cannot switch between the lenses. Although on the V50, I can use the wide, main, or telephoto, but once I start recording, I cannot change between them. The Note 10 Plus, I can only use the main lens when recording at 60 frames per second. So these are both on the main lens here. And so I can go ahead and pan over to the tower. And again, no optical zoom here, so no telephoto zoom, but we can zoom in with digitally all the way here on the V50. And again, that's an 8 times zoom at 60 frames per second. And again, not looking as clear at 30 frames per second, but fairly steady. So I can zoom back out and zoom all the way in on the Note 10 Plus, which keeps its 10 times digital range here at 60 frames per second, but also not as clear as it is at 30 frames per second, but still pretty stable. And again, autofocus here at 4K 60 with the V50. One more time. There it is. It's a little trickier to get that focus on the V50, but again, I still think it has a nicer depth of field. So there's a focus on the Note 10 Plus. And one more time. Okay, and so again, I'll walk down the stairs for a stabilization test at 4K 60. And as you all know, like I've said, 60 frames per second, a lot harder to stabilize. So let's see how these do here. And that is your 4K 60 test on both of these phones here. Hey everyone, so here is a front-facing camera test outdoors here, and they're both set at 1080p. The V50 max resolution is 1080p, while the Note 10 Plus can record up to 4K, but this is a apples to apples comparison at the same resolution here. All again from the front-facing camera, obviously outdoors. So this is some fairly decent lighting conditions in the shade. I can kind of pan around, so you kind of see as the lighting changes in the background, how it handles that exposure there. I can step more into the light and the sunlight here, and pan around some more. So the sunlight is now facing directly on my face. See how that's handling that harsh exposure there. And we'll pan back around and we'll do a little bit of stabilization test here. So I'll just start walking And so this is kind of the stabilization and performance you can expect outside in some changing lighting conditions here. And so if you like to vlog or just take some front-facing video with your phones, this is about what you can expect here from each of these cameras. Okay, so here's another front-facing video test, again both at 1080p, but the LG V50 can record with a wide-angle lens, and so when I start recording I can't switch between the two, so I thought I'd show you the difference here with the LG V50 in wide-angle and the Note 10 Plus in its standard lens. It cannot shoot wide-angle, again both at 1080p here. So just a quick front-facing camera test showing the difference between the LG V50 wide-angle and the Note 10 Plus in its standard camera. So of course with the wide-angle lens, obviously you're going to get a lot more in the picture with the V50, but here's what it would look like between the two. So that wide-angle definitely comes in clutch. Shooting front-facing video, to me, makes it a lot easier to film anything like this, and especially if you want to vlog from these cameras. Okay, and for the last front-facing video test here, I've got the Note 10 Plus in its highest resolution, which is 4K, and again the LG V50 highest you can go is 1080p. So these are both from the standard lens, 1080p on the V50, 4K on the Note 10 Plus. So let me know if you see any kind of a improvement on the Note 10 Plus picture quality and how it looks compared to the LG V50 here. And we'll do a quick stabilization test. I'll just quickly walk down the path here, give you an idea of how it stabilizes at 4K with the Note 10 Plus, and just how these two compare here. Front-facing video, 1080p versus 4K. Hey everyone, so now that you've seen all the photos and videos, I just want to end this video with my thoughts about how the cameras performed. And so I might be glancing down every now and then because I've got my notes right here, but I want to make this very conversational and just do it in one take so you can kind of see the actual video quality here from these front-facing cameras. And so this is without the live focus mode, so this is just straight shooting from the front-facing cameras, the Note 10s in 4K and the V50 is at its max resolution in 1080p. And so let's start with front-facing cameras. I think overall I prefer the LG V50 for both photos and video. I thought the colors and the detail and the sharpness just come out better on the V50 for both photos and video. And it also has a nice portrait mode. So I think LG has dramatically improved their front-facing cameras. I never liked them too much in the past, but I think it looks pretty good here, even in portrait mode. The edge detection and the background blur looks very nice. And now it's not all bad for the Note 10. I think they've dramatically improved that live focus mode for both photos and video. I think you're gonna like live focus video more on the Note 10 than on the V50, and it also has those additional filters for the live focus video. So if you like to play with that, the Note 10's got that for you, while the V50 doesn't. So hopefully Samsung can improve the live focus mode on the S10 and other models through software, but they've noticeably improved that here on the Note 10. So if you like live focus video, I think the Note 10 is the one to go with. But for overall, just camera quality and everything else, I would go with the V50, especially since the V50 also has that dedicated wide-angle front-facing camera. So the Note 10 can't do wide-angle video. You can do wide-angle photos, but the field of view just won't be as wide as the V50. So front-facing camera definitely goes to the V50 to me for both photos and video. For rear camera photos, I was actually surprised. The basic point-and-shoot shots were pretty much a push to me. Usually the Samsung photos come out a little bit more oversaturated. I think that's an overused term, but it's actually a good way to describe it. They're just really punchy colors. And the V50, while you think would be more natural, for a lot of the colorful shots, the color tones came out fairly similar. Overall, they're gonna be a little bit more muted than Samsung, but they are more vibrant than I thought they would be. So still point-and-shoot shots I thought were pretty much even out of both cameras. And the V50 really accelerates at that close-up macro photography. So if you like to do that, the V50 photos for macros or close-up shots come out much sharper with more detail and a lot more natural background blur. And so if you like taking macros, if you just like point and shoot, overall I would take the V50. And of course, if you like to play around with manual mode, you'll probably like the V50 more. But for the Note 10, I think Note 10, I know the V50 and the LG has started the wide angle trend on cameras, but I gotta give it to the Note 10. And even on from the S10, Samsung's wide angle cameras, since the S10 and even in this Note 10 are looking really, really good. They have a wider field of view than the LG V50's wide angle camera, and the photos just come out looking a lot nicer, more detail and just better colors and overall more pleasing looking photo there. And also live focus or portrait mode on the Note 10, even from the rear facing camera, like I said, has been dramatically improved over their previous models, and it also has more flexibility. So Samsung actually has the ability, it'll use the telephoto lens for the primary live focus or portrait shots, and just the usability of that has improved in the Note 10. It's easier to actually activate that portrait mode or live focus mode using that lens, but if it's still a little bit tricky at times, and so it has the option to do wide angle live focus. So you can actually back out to a more wider field of view. It's a lot easier to take the photo, a lot easier to activate that background blur or live focus mode, and the photos come out looking very nice. And so while the V50 portrait mode does look nice, the Note 10 is a little bit more flexible like that, and I was able to get better portrait shots more consistently on the Note 10. And the other thing that I noticed about the Note 10 is that it handled bright sunlight a lot better than the V50 did in auto mode. Just handled for that bright sunlight and exposure a lot better. So if you're shooting into some brighter sunlight during the day, if you're forced to do that, the Note 10 seems to be able to handle that better, at least in auto mode. But for overall, if you're just doing overall point and shoot, basic macro photography, I would take the LG. If you like to do more portrait style shooting, you like the wide angle, I'll go with the Note 10. And with rear camera video, I thought here's where the difference comes into play. I think for photos, the colors are a lot closer, but for video, LG is definitely more natural. Samsung has the punchier colors. And I think overall, Samsung's gonna have the more pleasing looking video. But if you like a more natural tone to your video, you want better audio, and you want better zoom stabilization, the LG V50 wins in those categories there. And the Samsung is overall more pleasing, I think, because of those punchier colors. Like I said, it has that super steady mode in 1080p, which actually works very well. And Samsung's audio is still not bad. I think the V50 and LG audio is just going to be better overall, but Samsung's audio has always been traditionally pretty good, and even the Note 10, it sounded pretty good. Here, it's just that LG was just that much better, I think, louder, richer, but overall, you're not going to go wrong with Samsung audio. So again, I think if you want more natural tones, you want better audio out of the camera, and you just want better zoom stabilization, overall, that's going to be the V50. If you want more pleasing video with the punchier colors and that super steady shot, the Note 10 does a very nice job there as well. So those are just my basic thoughts about how these cameras performed here in auto mode up against each other. I want to hear what you have to think though, so drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you think, how these cameras performed, and what your preferences are. So those are just my thoughts, and hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.